Hello and welcome to Emotionless, a podcast where we discuss the effects of technology on our society. Today's episode is called Isolation from Reality, and Ray Bradbury's The Veldt goes in depth about the issues that technology presents on us in the present.
This episode is sponsored by Virtual Proof. Our virtual reality goggles are one of a kind, with special features like water resistance and high quality graphics that make you feel like you're actually there.
Introducing The Veldt by Ray Bradbury. This story is about a family that is so immersed in technology that they slowly get disconnected from each other. It's set in the future with a basic family unit with George and Lydia as the parents and Wendy and Peter as their children. They have a futuristic home that does almost everything for them, including a massager, a stove that makes them dinner, bathes them, and the children's favorite, the nursery, which was a virtual reality room that immersed them in new environments.
The environments the children were exposed to were meant to help them with their neurotics. However, they overused their gadgets to the point of disconnection with their family.
And there were concerns.
A concern from the Veldt were that the children's minds and attitudes were altered due to the nursery, and instead of helping them, the nursery actually harmed their minds.
Yeah, and then the nursery really became a big issue because the kids ended up spending way too much time on it and it started altering their neuros, not being in a good way this time.
Yeah, their parents ended up just leaving them in the nursery and abandoning them to a point where, like, they had no emotional connection to each other anymore.
Yeah, the parents never gave them enough affection, so the technology basically just replaced them in general. And that is not a good thing when you're a parent because that means you gave them too much, and when you say no, they're gonna end up getting a little frustrated with you. A little more than usual kids would.
Yeah, so when the parents tried to take over their control and parent them properly again, um, they ended up killing them because of their hatred for their parents that they developed because of the nursery.
Yeah, it really just didn't go well, and I don't think they really educated them at all to a good point. But due to their whole life being immersed in technology, they began to become obsessed, and their basic emotions were not there anymore. And basically, they got alienated and disconnected. The disconnection can have a big impact because kids need to socialize with other people because it's a basic human need. And if they don't get enough socialization, it can cause depression and anxiety, all due to technology and them not acknowledging the harm that it's giving them.
Yeah, in Marshall Davis's Jones' touchscreen poem, he mentions, but with 3,000 friends online and only 5 I can count in real life. It reflects how people are becoming more isolated due to social media and only have a few meaningful connections in real life.
And we can see that by people not being able to make connections like it is an emotional challenge. Like in The Veldt, where Wendy and Peter, they didn't have the emotional capacity to tolerate being told no. And children nowadays still can't take the, the answer no. And it's not a good thing because that means the parents have given them too much and that they can't tolerate no anymore because they've said yes too many times to them.
They weren't able to tolerate being told no, and the reason for that was because of their parents abandoning them. George and Lydia neglected their children and resorted to using devices to raise their children, such as the nursery, and they used it as a pacifier to keep them busy. Since Wendy and Peter didn't have a strong emotional connection to their parents, their basic emotions were stripped away.
A good example of how this is having an effect on children is shown through Jean Twitch's research about how
Kids born between 1995 and 2012 are on the brink of the worst mental health crisis in decades. Eighth graders, who are heavy users of social media, increase their risk of depression by 27%. Teens who spend 3 hours a day or more on electronic devices are 35% more likely to have a risk factor for suicide, such as making a plan.
Kids compare themselves to perfect people on the internet, so even young children think that they aren't enough, which adds to the risk of suicide at a very young age.
Also, they get addicted to gaming, which also
Uh, which leads to not getting enough sleep due to their devices.
the addiction leads to less emotional connection in the real world, and especially with other people for socialization, which isn't good at all.
However, the use of technology can also lead to good things, such as education and learning new important things. And you can also make connections and talk to other friends through technology.
Technology can also keep us entertained and distracted when we might be down, but that can also be abused and overused, which can cause us to not be as happy as we were. And it would do what it did in the Veldt to Peter and Wendy, where they completely lost emotional control. But I think when it's used appropriately, it should be fine to use.
Another benefit from technology is finding inspiration, and creativity can also stem from the use of technology.
Technology was originally created to be a beneficial platform, like, to our lives, but humans were the ones that started abusing technology and using it for the very, very wrong reasons, and basically it became really bad for their brain. As you can see in the Veldt, with Peter and Wendy, they used the nursery way too much, and it became an issue.
Yeah, and that issue translates into the real world as well. Children and adults alike are being consumed by the excessive use of technology. The Veldt represents this very well.
Because people might start to realize how we are overusing technology like Wendy and Peter were. This is an important lesson for all of us to understand, so we recommend the book for everyone. We are the hand wielding the glove of technology and science, so we must use it with our care.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, thanks for tuning in for today's episode of Emotionless, titled Isolation from Reality. Make sure to check out Virtual Goggles. All proceeds from sales will support our podcast. See you next time on Emotionless.